What's up, guys? Welcome to this week's episode where we're going to break down and predict UFC Fight Night Anthony Hernandez versus Roman Dolidze. And before we get started, let's talk about the best bets video I released, where I had the lock of the week hitting, Kevin Vallejos, the safety lock hit, the ultimate lock hit, the affordable juice lock hit, picking Chris Duncan to win as an underdog hit, and the most confident picks parlay hit as well. So I was just on fire last week, and the only one that didn't come through was Nick Klein, but he folded after a good first round, and I'm done tooting my own horn. I hope you're having a good day. I hope you're doing well. Let's get into these picks. So first fight we're going to talk about is Gabrielle Fernandes versus Julia Stoliarenko. My pick is going to be Gabrielle Fernandes. So when I first saw this girl, Julia Stoliarenko's record, I legit wanted to laugh. I wanted to burst out laughing, but not in a disrespectful way, like making fun of her record or anything. It's all respect to her, but I wanted to laugh because, like, why did they set this up? I feel like they're doing her so dirty. Like, who is responsible for putting this matchup together? This is a complete mismatch, in my opinion, and they're putting a 10-3 record versus 11-8 record. Gabrielle Fernandez, she just knocked down Kong Wang and then submitted her. She hit her like a truck, stayed calm, didn't rush the finish. While Juliana, she just got TKO'd in the third round. She's 2-5 in the UFC, and she just hasn't looked good in any fight, right? And in this matchup, I can see Gabriella staying composed, staying dangerous, landing some nice, powerful shots on the feet. I feel like she's a safe parlay piece. I saw she was a minus 400 favorite, and yeah, I don't disagree. Her striking is very powerful. She's very durable, and she's never been finished before. So I see her as someone who can bully opponents with her strength, especially in the clinch as well. And she's fighting Julia, someone who just needs to get this fight on the ground in order to have any sort of success here. But her ability to get opponents down on the mat, it's tragic, right? And she can't get takedowns. She can't strike her way into a takedown. Her striking is definitely not on the same level as Gabrielle. I think she's gonna get pieced up here. You know, she's gonna get out physical here as well, and she won't be as strong. So, what are we even doing in this matchup? I'm picking Gabrielle to win this. She has big power. She's calm under pressure. She has a strong clinch game. Never been finished, and she just dropped and submitted Kong Wang. Like, that's very impressive. Seeing how Kong Wang is like before the UFC and during the UFC, she's doing really well. And for Gabrielle to have that win, uh, that says a lot, right? You got Julia, who's 2-5 in the UFC, and she's gonna get out muscled. She has weak takedowns and poor striking defense. So pick is Gabrielle Fernandez. I think it's a mismatch, and I just think she's gonna be stronger, sharper, and she's a safe pick in this matchup. Next up, we are going to break down and predict Uros Medic versus Gilbert Urbina. This was a bit of a tough pick, but I ended up going with Uros Medics. I'm picking Uros Medics because, all right, so both guys, they didn't look good in their last fight, right? I really didn't like how Gilbert Urbina looked in his last fight versus Charles Radke. He was very timid in that matchup. His striking, he was very hesitant. He looked like he was throwing soft pillow shots when he did throw, and he just overall he looked kind of weak. And the fight ended in one round. The whole first round, he was getting hit with jabs. Then right before the end of the round ended, he got clipped by a sick left hand shot, and then he got knocked out. But Uros Medic in his last fight, he got knocked out in 30 seconds. But it was kind of a rookie mistake, I think, where he threw a right hand to the body, backed up with his chin right up in the air, and got clipped moving backwards. He had his hands really low, didn't have his guard up, and got clipped. It was over, right? So, and I've always thought that Uros Medic has so much potential to be great in this division, but when he wins, because when he wins fights, his striking looks really good. He looks really crisp, but he's been coming up short and hasn't really had his breakthrough moment yet in the UFC. But when Uros Medic is on, he's on. He has great footwork, he has great takedown defense, and he snipes you like a cobra with powerful shots. But you can say the same thing about Gilbert as well. When he looks good, he looks good as well. He's very sharp and quick. He uses footwork. He goes for takedowns. But the thing about Gilbert is, I think he relies on his chin too much. His striking defense isn't the best, and he's okay with getting hit. So I think Uros should be the quicker guy on the feet, and I think he's going to look good here because Gilbert, he doesn't have that one shot knockout power like Uros Medic's previous opponent did. And Gilbert is someone who wants to throw up some volume and try to break you down. So if Uros were to make the same mistake he made in his last fight, which I doubt he won't get punished so severely, right? Because Gilbert's not gonna knock you out uh, with that one shot knockout power. So Uros has room to make that mistake if he wants to, because yeah, Gilbert isn't gonna put your lights out. So I just think Uros will show levels in his boxing and beat Gilbert to the punch, be the quicker guy. And if Gilbert tries to take him down, I think Uros has good enough takedown defense to deal with that, right? So Gilbert isn't some Khabib or anything. So I think Uros is going to keep it on the feet, be faster, and be sharper than Gilbert. And Uros, he's a fast starter. He has sharp striking, great footwork. And yeah, he did get knocked out early in his last fight, but he still has very high potential. Where Gilbert, he's low output. He relies on his chin, I believe, and his defense is pretty poor. And he really didn't look good in his last fight versus Charles Radke. So picking Uros Medics, he's the faster, cleaner striker, and I think he has the better tools to win this matchup. Next fight, we're talking about Jocelyn Edwards versus Priscila Cachoeira. My pick is Jocelyn Edwards. Jocelyn Edwards, she's one of my favorite female fighters, right? She's very talented in my opinion. Not only is Jocelyn a really good fighter with potential to be at the very top in the division, but in this matchup, she's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage. She'll be 7 years younger, and she has a ton of momentum right now. Her last 2 wins, she looks like a completely different fighter. She destroyed Tamira's Vidal, who isn't so impressive. Vidal isn't UFC level, but dominated her all 3 rounds, then choked her out in the 3rd round. And most recently, she knocks out Chelsea Chandler in the 1st round. So she's been looking so locked in recently, and her striking is sharp. She knows how to manage distance. She's very good at hitting and not getting hit. And she hits with intentions to hurt you. These aren't just pity power shots. She's very powerful. She's fighting Priscila, who's coming off of a good win against Josie Nunes, which looking back on it now isn't the most impressive victory. There was a massive size difference in that matchup as well. But Priscilla is gonna come forward. She's not gonna be defensive minded. She just wants to walk you down and hurt you. Doesn't really set up any shots. So coming up against Jocelyn Edwards, who seems to be in her prime right now, she's gonna get picked apart. I believe Jocelyn, she's gonna use her footwork, she's gonna use her jab, and I think she's gonna land the cleaner shots here. And you can't brawl your way to a victory when you're fighting Jocelyn Edwards. She's too high level for that, and I think Priscilla isn't on a high enough level to compete with Jocelyn. And in my opinion, this is a confident pick. And that's just the skills we're talking about. When then you bring up that Jocelyn will be 7 years younger with a 5-inch reach advantage, I see Jocelyn picking her apart using footwork, being more defensively sound than Priscilla. So I think she can even get a finish here, especially having that 5-inch reach advantage, and she's younger. And she has elite distance control. She's sharp and she's powerful. Her striking just has been looking really good. When you're fighting Priscilla, who just wants to walks forward with wild shots, and she lacks defense, she's gonna get picked apart. So the pick is Jocelyn Edwards. I think she's gonna be more technical, and I think she has better IQ, and there's a potential for a finish in this matchup as well. So next fight on the card, we're talking about Elijah Smith versus Toshiomi Kazama. The pick is Elijah Smith, of course. I've been backing Elijah Smith in all his fights, and he's been winning all his fights, thankfully. So in my opinion, Elijah Smith, he's a winner. I think he just always finds a way to win. And on top of that, he has really good skills. good speed, good footwork, good timing. He has some dog in him as well. So I can definitely see him competing in the top 15 in the future, but that all depends on how he will look in his performances, you know. But right now, he's only 22 years old, so much time to gain experience and grow. Eventually, there are certain matchups that he will get that can be problematic for him, like someone that can match his timing and his strikes and who has big power punching power. But until he gets to that level, I feel he can smoothly win his fights. But on his way up to fighting the higher levels, the way he looks in his fights will determine if he can actually beat those higher level guys or not. But these unranked opponents, I think he eats them up. And if he wins them pretty dominantly, like how I think he will, then we can start talking about higher ranked opponents for Elijah, right? So he's fighting this guy, Toshiomi. He isn't a big power puncher. He doesn't have great timing in his shots, and he isn't super durable. This is one of those matchups that I feel will favor Elijah. And Toshomi, he's gonna get outstruck here. Elijah, he has good takedown defense as well, and has really good submission defense if he does find himself on the ground, which is unlikely because Toshomi struggles to get takedowns, even though he needs them in order to get his game going. And Toshomi, he won his last fight, but he was about to lose that fight. He got a submission after getting outstruck the whole first round, and his eye was pretty much swollen shut by the time he won with a submission. But he did show good perseverance there. But I can see Elijah defending the takedowns, work his way back up if he does get taken down somehow, continue outstriking Toshomi, who has been knocked out twice already in the UFC, and both in the first round. So I don't think Elijah's gonna knock him out. I think maybe a late finish, if anything, after he outvolumes him and breaks him down, or a clear 30-27 unanimous decision win for him. So Elijah is on the rise right now. He's been looking good. And to show me, I would say he's a below average fighter, not UFC level. Doesn't have any momentum right now. So I gotta go with the talented prospect who has great timing. He has strong defense and he stays composed. Where you have Toshomi Kazama, and his striking is just weak. He has poor durability and he needs takedowns to win fights, but he can't get them, right? So the pick is definitely going to be Elijah here. He's going to be cleaner, faster, and I think he dominates with his footwork and his movement in this matchup. So next fight on the card, we are talking about Julius Walker versus Raffael Cerqueira. Not sure how to pronounce that name. All right, so my final pick for this fight, I flip-flop back and forth a lot. I'm going Julius Walker. I flip-flop back and forth in this fight, you know. I have a lot to say about this fight, right? So we have Julius Walker. He did just lose his UFC debut via split decision, which he took the fight on short notice to an actually somewhat decent fighter in Alonzo Menafield, who's a big power puncher. Then we have Raffael, who has shown nothing in the UFC other than being a human punching bag in his last two fights. His striking defense has looked atrocious. It's like his game plan was to get knocked out in the first round in both fights. So in the UFC level, we haven't seen any positives from Raffael, like nothing at all. We've only seen him get knocked out very quickly twice. And Julius Walker, he had a back and forth fight, a sloppy war with a veteran of the sport, Alonzo Menafield. So I think we can trust Julius to go in there and actually stick to a game plan and actually try to win the fight. And I think he's going to try to put up a high pace on Raffael, come out aggressively. But the thing is, I think Julius will come in and try to mix in his wrestling, which can favor Raffael, in my opinion, because we've seen Raffael's weaknesses. It's to beat Raffael, it's to blitz him quickly with punches and knock him out. But if you go in there trying to wrestle him and he doesn't have to worry about getting knocked out quickly, that actually gives him a chance to win the fight. So this could be a war like Julius's last fight, where Julius is striking and then trying to go for takedowns, Raffael defending him, then throwing offense back. But we just don't know how good Raffael's takedown defense is going to be. But I can assume it's not as bad as his striking defense has looked, right? So I just think Raffael's striking could finally appear in this matchup. And I do think Raffael has an opportunity here because I don't think Julius is going to be as sharp on the feet as Raffael's previous opponents. And I don't think Julius is going to get a quick knockout here, but I think Julius will land some shots. They just won't be flatlining Raffael like his previous fights. So I think overall, Julius is the more complete fighter because he can strike, he can also mix in wrestling. He's younger, he's bigger. But because Julius isn't coming in trying to get an early knockout, that can give Raphael some breathing room to work in his striking. And also, Julius isn't going to be as sharp on the feet as Raphael's previous opponents, like I mentioned. So I just think Julius will try to strike and get takedowns while Raphael defends takedowns most of the fight, gets into a war. But I think Raphael can land the better shots on the feet now that he has a chance to let his striking develop into a fight as it goes on. But that's when we see Julius using his size and his strength to take Raphael down and get the fight to the mat if he gets uncomfortable with Raphael's striking. And you can argue that Julius has first round finishes by strikes, but I don't think that level of competition that he is doing that to is persuasive enough to beat someone who was capable of putting a level 11 wins in a row and making it to the UFC. Plus, Raphael, he's due for a win. Two losses in a row. Uh, I think he has to be cautious here in the first round. I think he knows that now. He doesn't want to get knocked out in the first round back to back to back. So I think he will be able to showcase his striking in this matchup. But at the end of the day, Julius can hang in the striking and also go for the takedowns whenever he needs to. I think Rafael is capable of landing decent shots on the feet now that Julius isn't the type of guy to go in there and try to knock him out clean. But Rafael's striking defense could be bad enough for Julius to land at least something and then wobble him, get the fight to the ground. So the pick is Julius Walker. We've seen Rafael struggle versus strikers, but this matchup could give him some breathing room. And Julius, he's durable, he's well rounded, and he can wrestle. He pushes the pace, so I think he's the more complete fighter. I think he's gonna mix in the strikes and the wrestling, and I think he'll edge it out in a good fight, right? So pick is Julius Walker. Moving on, we are talking about Eryk Anders versus Christian Leroy Duncan. All right, so when I saw this matchup, the pick is Christian Leroy Duncan, right? When I saw this matchup and I saw both of their stats, I was just staring. I was staring at one thing. This number right here, 38. Eryk Anders is really 38 years old. Like, I just think that's so crazy because he made his debut when he was 30 years old, but now he's 38 facing a 30-year-old decent striker. Like, 38 is pushing it, right? When you're talking about fighting years, I think we're gonna see the younger man and Leroy Duncan outclass him on the feet. He already has better striking than Eryk Anders, and he'll be 8 years younger. Like, how can we not pick Christian Leroy Duncan here? He's a technical, unorthodox striker. He moves well. He's very fluid. While Anders, he's just too predictable. We know what he wants. He's trying to land that left hand shot, but loading up on a big power punch isn't gonna work when it comes to someone as high level as Christian Leroy Duncan. So Leroy Duncan, he's gonna see it coming, and I can see Christian landing some nice counter shots here. Possibly get an early finish. Eryk is gonna have to land something big early in this fight and gain some respect, and then try to make this a dirty fight. Try to get him into a brawl, push him up against the fence. But I think Christian is too aware, too long with a 4-inch reach advantage, too fluid in his movement, and he has good takedown defense. So I imagine this fight would take place mostly on the feet, and I think Leroy Duncan has too many tools in his arsenal, too many diverse strikes he can use against a somewhat basic and predictable Eryk Anders. And on top of that, Anders is pushing 40 years old. He gets dropped in almost every fight, and he has won his last two fights, but still, you're dealing with a different breed here. It's basically a new generation of a fighter. So yeah, I just think Eryk Anders, he's not going to be as fast. He's getting up there in age. He has a predictable striking style, and he does get dropped often versus Duncan, who's going to be fluid. He's an unorthodox striker, longer reach, better defense. I just think the sharper and younger fighter, the one who has more tools in Christian Leroy Duncan, will be able to win this fight. So the pick is Christian Leroy Duncan. Moving on, we are breaking down Miles Johns versus Gene Silva. I'm going Gene I said Gene Silva. I'm going Gene Matsumoto. Yeah. Joan Silva is not on this card, not yet. Uh, so Gene's a good fighter, right? He's coming off of a split decision loss to Rob Font, where he had a bit of trouble dealing with that size and length of Rob, and you can actually make an argument that Gene won that fight. That's how close it was. I personally thought Gene won at the time, but he's not gonna have that tall, lanky opponent problem here. Gene will be fighting someone his size again, and I think he's going to shine. He has pretty good wrestling. He comes forward, walks you down. He's tough and durable as hell. He strikes you up, then pushes you on the cage, wears you down, gets the takedown on you, continues to wear you down. He's one of the better and skilled prospects on the rise, and I see him pressing Miles against the fence, outdogging him, using his youth and his strengths and eagerness to win him this fight, right? So on the feet as well, I can see Gene uh, outworking Miles Johns. Gene, he's actually a Muay Thai champion. He's very compact. He's built like a tank, so he's very durable as well. Where Miles Johns, he can have low output and he also fades sometimes in his fights. His cardio isn't the best. I don't think it's going to be better than Gene Matsumoto whatsoever in this matchup. So Miles Johns, he's going to have to land something big here to get some respect early, then try to get a takedown when Gene Matsumoto is dazed. But even then, Gene doesn't get wobbled like that at all, and he's super durable. He keeps coming forward. Plus, he's the much younger fighter, and he's on the rise right now. One of the good prospects to watch out for. And yeah, like I said, Gene, he's just very compact, powerful, and he's a Muay Thai champion. He has relentless pace, and he has great cardio. Where Miles Johns, he fades late. He has low output. He needs big shots to win. But I just think Gene Matsumoto, his pressure, his cardio, it's going to help him win this fight, and I can see him being a future top 15 guy in this division. So that's it for that fight. Next fight, we're going to be breaking down, talking about Andre Fili versus Christian Rodriguez. I'm going Christian Rodriguez. So both men, they're coming off of a loss to Melquiz Costa. Andre getting submitted in the first round and Rodriguez losing by decision to him. But Mel Costa, he's a good fighter, but C-Rod, he really made him work for it in a good fight. And we know what Andre Fili is about. Sometimes he looks good, sometimes he doesn't. He's kind of like a Michael Johnson. You never really know what you're gonna get, either going on a losing streak or have a great performance. But when he does have a great performance, it's to people that aren't too impressive. So we know that he's very inconsistent. His best wins in the UFC are to Cub Swanson and Charles Jourdain, both wins by split decision. And both of those wins were a while ago. Other than that, he hasn't really beat anyone that stands out. So he's been in the UFC for a while and hasn't taken the next step in his career in terms of leveling up his skill level. And he's 35 years old now, so we know what we're gonna get from him. It's not like this is the fight where he magically is gonna get much better all of a sudden. He's facing Christian Rodriguez, who I really like as a fighter. He has consistent performances, but yeah, he did just lose a good fight to Melquiz Costa and got submitted early versus Julian Erosa, which was in the first round, and that was the first and only time he's been finished. But other than that, he's looked great, taking out top prospects on the rise consistently. He got the nickname Prospect Killer. And if you saw Christian Rodriguez's performance, against Austin Bashi, I mean, he looked crisp. His boxing, his timing, his movement, his ability to not get controlled for very long. And a lot of people were hyping up Bashi for that fight. And C-Rod, you know, he busted him up the whole fight, which I thought was very, very impressive. And Andre Fili, he isn't some prospect on the rise. He's 35 years old. He's been with the UFC forever and hasn't had a moment like that in the UFC for the many years that he's been there. He hasn't had that moment where he's like, oh, wow, with any performance. He hasn't wowed us with any performance, or at least hasn't beaten anyone worth mentioning. And so while Fili is a good striker, he is vulnerable to getting hit. Fili, he likes to come forward. He tries to put pressure on you with his strikes, but that leaves openings in his defense. And I think Christian Rodriguez can stay composed. He can pull out some nice counters. He can be quick with his strikes, avoid being controlled in the clinch, and potentially even pull out some wrestling against Fili. So I just think Fili, he's too inconsistent. He's hittable. And he's 35 years old right now. His best wins were years ago. And then you have Rodriguez, the prospect killer. He has sharp hands, crisp timing, and he mixes it up well. So the pick is Christian Rodriguez. I think he's going to be the cleaner striker, and he has better momentum. Yeah, I can see Christian Rodriguez winning this fight. So next up on the card, we have Iasmin Lucindo versus Angela Hill. Uh, I'm taking Angela Hill. Mate, you're 40 years of age. What are you doing with a school bag on stage? You're 40 years of age. I'm picking Angela Hill, even though she's 40 years old. For a 40-year-old, Angela has won a couple fights where she wasn't really expected to. And Yasmin is 23. Like, that is really young. Obviously, Angela, she's going to have a ton of experience here. In my opinion, just take the over 1.5 rounds, call it a day. Nah, but really, Angela Hill, she's very small, like for this division. She's a very small female, and even though they're identically the same height here, she just seems very small. But Angela, she has never been knocked out before, so I think we're gonna see Yasmin strike with her here and mix in some takedowns, try to control Angela up against the cage, but. And I do think Yasmin is going to be able to do that for 3 rounds straight as well, if she needs to. But the way that Yasmin looked in her last fight, it was just atrocious, right? Angela, she's very durable. Like I said, never been knocked out. She's nasty in the clinch. She has great kicks. Her experience is obviously on her side. So I think in a close fight, I'm going to say Angela Hill gets the job done. She'll land the meaner punches. She'll be able to bully her around and dictate where the fight goes, using her experience to her advantage. And Yasmin is still super young, she'll use this fight as a learning experience, win or lose. And I just think it's going to be a close fight. And because of that, I think I'm going with someone who has more experience in close fights. And, 23, Lucindo, she's raw, but she is improving. She's gonna try to mix in strikes and takedowns. She's gonna have some success doing that. But against 40-year-old Angela Hill, who has experience and has looked good beating contenders at this age, she's durable. She's gonna have sharp clinch work, and I just think Angela Hill, she's the veteran savvy in a close fight. So I'm going Angela Hill. Next fight on the card, we have Steve Erceg versus Ode Osbourne. So we have. Oh, wait a minute. That's Steve Carroll. Yo, I'm not gonna lie. Like, when I made this slide, I was cracking up. Like, I was just laughing to myself the whole time. Because, like, you can't say they don't look like each other. Like, Steve Carroll. All right, bro. I'm picking Steve Carroll to win this fight. All right. So after going 3-0 in the UFC, Steve gets a title shot, then loses, then goes on to be 3-3 in the UFC. Obviously, he had a big jump in competition, fighting the top of the division back to back to back. And that just shows that he needed more time to develop before fighting that high of level in competition. So, and you have Ode Osbourne, who he has a ton of experience fighting these guys who are trying to make it to the top of the division. Ode, he's coming off of an impressive victory, giving Luis Gurul his first ever loss, although that was Gurul's UFC debut. And then you have Steve Erceg, he gave the champion Pantoja a good fight, showed some nice strikes, but some questionable fight IQ in that matchup. But the thing is, I don't think Ode Osbourne is capable of fighting competitively at the top of the division. He's been too inconsistent, and this is definitely a winnable fight for Steve, who he has good striking, he has good grappling. Steve might have to weather an early storm and then start wearing down Ode as the fight goes on using his strikes. And I think Ode, he's more of an early starter, and Steve is more of a fighter who thrives as the fight goes on. So I think Steve is smart enough and more experienced enough now to not get caught by a big shot so early in the fight, like how he did with in the Kai Kara France fight. And not getting caught here will allow him to break down Ode Osbourne as the fight goes on. So because we've seen so many Ode Osbourne performances and we know what we're gonna get from him, he's inconsistent. And sometimes he's on, sometimes he isn't. While Steve, he looked good on his way up to the title shot, made the title fight competitive, got fed, uh, got fed to the top of the division. Quickly, he got fed to the Savages. So I think we're gonna see the Steve Erceg we saw on his way up to the title again, and it's gonna be a good fight between the two. But I just think Steve's striking, it's good. He has really good grappling as well. You know, he had a really competitive fight with Pantoja, and you have Ode, who's inconsistent. He's an early starter, but he fades with pressure as the fight goes on. He starts to fade, so I can see Steve surviving early, weathering a storm, and then he takes over in the later rounds. So next fight on the card, we're breaking down and talking about Roman Dolidze versus Anthony Hernandez. I'm picking Anthony Hernandez to win this fight. You know, how can we not? He's been looking so dominant recently. I think he is finally at a place in his career where he started to figure himself out. You know, he's confident in the cage, his skills are there, and he's really coming together. He's in his prime, I would say, and he's facing a 37-year-old Roman Dolidze who isn't a bad fighter, but just the eye test in itself, you can see that Anthony looks dominant in his fights. You know, his grappling pressure is relentless. He has insane cardio. I think he can use that to win this fight. You know, his striking is coming along as well, and I just think his grappling is going to be the key to victory here. You have Roman, who he's going to be trying to land heavy strikes in this matchup. The wrestling exchanges could be competitive as well, but I think Anthony is durable enough to deal with that and continue to implement his game plan using his relentless pressure and cardio. And yeah, Dolidze, he does have good wrestling as well, but I think the difference maker here will be the ability to push the pace. And it's a question of who's going to be able to implement their game plan. And I just think Hernandez has a greater will to push the pace. And in terms of competition, you know, Hernandez has fought and beaten better guys than Dolidze, meaning he's the much more proven fighter. And it's a 5 round fight. And that's plenty of time to implement uh, his game plan. He's gonna break Dolidze down, you know, continue his win streak to 8 wins in a row, and I just think he's gonna be using his relentless grappling. He's a cardio monster, and he has proven wins in the UFC. And while Dolidze, he's a dangerous striker. He has solid wrestling. He's 37. He fades in wars, and I just think that pressure and cardio of Anthony Hernandez is gonna push him to that 8 fight win streak. So I'm going Anthony Hernandez. And that concludes my picks for this week's UFC card. Let me know what you thought and let me know who you're rolling with. You know, drop your prediction down below. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my picks and or if you thought they were completely terrible. I'd love to see what y'all thought. And as always, hope you're having a great day. Hope you're doing well. That's it for me. I'm out. Peace.